What's up YouTube, and welcome to another draw along with me, where today we're going to create this Olaf design. Now, as always, there's links to all the requirements in the description down below. You can find the canvas size, you can find the palette, and there's also a handy stencil guide as well to draw Olaf with. Now, make sure to subscribe for weekly tutorials, but if you want even more tutorials from me, come and join me over on Patreon, where I post 3 every single month to my catalogue, now at nearly 90 at the time of recording, and with more to come every single month. It just continues to grow. So hit the link in the description down below and come and show your support. And with all that said, let's get started. So once you've created your canvas and you've of course got the palette for today's design, the other thing you're going to need of course is the stencil. Now, to add the stencil, all you need to do is save it to your photos, and then if you go up to your actions, you go to the option of add and insert a photo, you'll be able to add the stencil guide here. All this is in this particular case is a trace of Olaf, so that we've just got something to work against. Now I'm going to go ahead and drop that right down. I'm going to drop it down to about 25%. With your own work, please feel free to leave it as it is. We're going to go ahead and change our background color though to the very bottom right of the palette. Now you'll notice that our stencil now disappears. So we're going to hit done on our background color, and then we're going to tap on the stencil for a minute and tap on the option of invert. And now you should just about be able to see the white outline of Olaf. We're then going to go ahead and create a new layer, then drag it underneath, and we're going to create a couple of new layers. We'll just create 4 for the moment. And the top one here, we're going to rename it, and we're going to call it head. We're going to create separate shapes for him. So we've got head. We're going to rename the next one down. We're going to call it body. And then we will go ahead and rename this one again, and we'll call it body 2, because the body's made up of a couple of lumps. We'll create more layers as we need them. So if we go to the head, we're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and grab this color here. It is the middle color here in the 3rd column from the right. We're going to go to our brush. We're going to change it to the option of calligraphy, and I'm going to use the monoline brush. Feel free to use any type of other brush you like. And my monoline brush, stabilization wise, has been set to maximum streamline and a little bit of stabilization, about 65%. Just keep our lines nice and smooth. And if we hit done, the size again also doesn't really matter. I'm just going to set it to around about 20%. I'm going to zoom in on the head, and you'll be able to see the stencil there. And we're going to go ahead and just get the head shape in. It's best to start at the top, make your way down. So we're just practicing an exercise with sort of lighting and shadowing and using the subject of Olaf. Now what you can do is then when you let go, you can just let go and readjust, and then try to just blend your lines into each other as smooth as you can. In certain areas it may be best to create separate lines and just let them flow into one another. Like this one here, for example, I'll just let that run into there. And then I can drag and drop the colour in. I'm going to go ahead and we'll go to our layers, go down to the body, and we'll do exactly the same. We're going to get this next layer in here. And then you want to go through that shape all the way to your start point, so you can drag and drop the colour in. We're going to go to our layers and go down to body number 2. And we're going to get the main one in here as well. It may be easy to make your brush size a little bit bigger. It's totally up to you. I'm going to go all the way up and then through to the start point and drag and drop my colour in. And on this occasion, I just need to go ahead, just widen that up at the bottom ever so slightly. So I'm just going to go back in here, bring that down just a little bit more. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to create another new layer, and we're going to create another new layer, and we're going to grab both, swiping from left to right, and drag them underneath our body 2. And they're just going to be our feet. So we'll just grab the top one first of all, which is going to be the right foot. So the top layer out of the 2 new ones we create, we want to layer them correctly. So we just need to create the right foot here, and then go round to your start point, drag and drop the color in, just so that they stack behind one another correctly. And then the bottom layer, we're going to go to the left foot here and just create the next one in, and then loop all the way around and drag and drop your color in. Now I just need to sort of go into here a little bit more. Excellent. Let's then go ahead, and above the head, we're going to create another new layer. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and we're going to grab the color in the bottom right of the palette. And we're going to add in the stones that are on the chest. And we're going to start with this stone here. Now, if you can't see your stencil, just simply go back to it and invert it back, and it will go to black again. And you may be able to see that a little bit easier on this lighter color. We're just going to get all of these really quick and easy basic shapes in here before we start to highlight and shadow. There's another one in this area here, and drag and drop the color. Now up here, I want to go ahead and I want to dot in the eyes on this layer as well, because they're quite separated from one another. I feel like we could easily do that. Now with the monoline brush, if you max it out in size and tap perfectly in the center of that circle, we will actually have the perfect size for the two pupils. We zoom out, we're then going to go ahead and create another new layer. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab this color here, and it will be the top of the third column from the right. Going to bring that size down this time, just to anywhere, it doesn't really matter. And we're just going to draw in a circle here behind the eye. Feel free to draw a circle and hold it if you really want to, just to smooth out any bumps and lumps you may have made. And we'll do the same over here as well. Now you'll notice I've drawn ever so slightly behind what will be the nose. And also our layers are stacked incorrectly. So once we've done that, we can drag and drop the white underneath the dark dots. At this point, we can now go ahead and create another new layer. Go to our colors and grab an orange tone, so this middle color in the fifth column from the right. Let's bring that brush size down to something smaller, around about sort of 6% on this occasion, and let's just draw in the nose. So it's going to start over here, it's going to come down towards the point. It may be easier for you to then take your pen off of the canvas at that point. I'm going to go along the top edge here, down, and we end up with this little point on the end. We'll drag and drop the color in. You may just need to go ahead and just smooth out any lines like I'm doing. And we've got the nose, and it's starting to come together now. And the final layer we want to, for him, create is all the branches and all the twigs that go into him. So we're going to go ahead and create another new layer. We will drag it to the top just so it's in order. And then we'll go to our colors and we're going to grab this brown here. It's the bottom of the fifth column from the left. And if we go ahead and we zoom in, we've got his eyebrows here. We're going to make our brush nice and small down to a 1% and just get those shapes in as well. So getting, again, all the basic shapes in, and then we can practice our highlights and shading with a subject. So with a design like this, I would always provide a stencil guide because the character has already been made. I don't want to do an exercise necessarily on creating Olaf. It's more about the highlights and the shading, as I've mentioned. Now, just for these ones up here, I'm going to go up to the 6% mark, and we'll start just on the head ever so slightly and just sort of try to draw it in sort of stiff lines. So stiff, sort of pointy lines, like so. And with a character, as I said, the character has already been defined. It already has a set style. Now, if you want to practice drawing Olaf, feel free to, of course, do that. You know, find a reference photo and sort of match it up. Neither is incorrect. Once we've done that, we're going to move on to the arm that sticks out over here. Now, one thing with the arm is, in a minute, we're going to cut it. So don't worry if you run into the body. We're going to put the arm behind him. And I'm going to start up here and come down the arm. But when I see a character like this that's already been created, I know that it's got to look like them. If you get one thing wrong with a character, it's going to look very off because we're so used to what that character looks like. And so when I do a tutorial like this, I like to provide a stencil guide on the actual subject itself. I know a stencil guide's not for everyone, and people want to learn how to draw it, and that's for you to decide in your spare time. However, I want to make tutorials that I know everyone can do. And also, you know, as I said, this is going to be more of a test of just making sure we can highlight and shadow and we're comfortable with that. Now, I mentioned earlier, we're going to put this arm behind, and by doing so, all we need to do is go up to body 1 layer here. We'll tap on it and we'll use the option here of select, so we can select that shape of that layer we've made. Make sure color fill is grayed out down here. And if we go back to our layers, we're going to go up to the twig layer that we created. Grab your eraser. Doesn't matter what your eraser is, just set it to whatever. And as long as you can press really firmly and just delete everything from there, you're good. And then tap on your selection tool. So now we've pushed it in behind. If we go back to our brush and make sure our layer is the twig layer at the top, we're going to go ahead and draw it in here. And we're going to draw all the way down like so. But when you're drawing something, to stay on topic, such as a landscape, you can decide to make a tree a little bit lean a certain way. There's no rules to that. That's your landscape. That's the one that you're making. But when we have a character, you know, whether it's a Simpson or anything like that, you have to make sure it resembles the character. Otherwise, it's going to look like they have a wobbly eye, or something like that just doesn't quite work out, like the body position. And so for today, we have a stencil guide. So I know it's not for everyone. And now we have all of our basic shapes for Olaf. Now I just want to get some basic shapes in for the background as well, so you can also understand how the lighting's working. Now we're going to go ahead and swipe from left to right on all the layers except the stencil. Once you swipe from left to right, hit the option here of group, and we'll rename this, and we're just going to call it subject, or you can call it Olaf, whatever you want. I'm going to call it subject and collapse the group down. I'm going to create a new layer, drag it underneath our subject, and we're going to create the first layer of ground. So we're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and we're going to grab this color here, the bottom of that third column from the right. We're then going to go ahead and draw in a little mound that's going to run in behind our subject up here. And it's going to swoop down. So it's going to kind of sort of swoop down like this. And then in behind, I'm going to go ahead and make my brush size bigger so you can see it. So you can see it just runs up here towards the top of the button. I'm then going to go ahead and allow it to maybe sort of droop down a little bit and then peak back up before then just swooping off at exactly the same sort of pace. So it just rolls off to the right there. Now you just need to make sure you've linked up both your lines just in behind, and then drag and drop your color into this bottom area here. So we stood on a little mound here. Then we're going to go to our layers and create another new layer and drag it underneath the one that we just created. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to utilize this color here, the bottom of the second column from the right. And we're going to draw in a line and another, well, it's going to be a bit of a wobbly line. Doesn't have to be perfect, just a little bit higher than that mound, a little bit further back, and go left to right so you can drag and drop the color in. Now, let's get started with our sort of layer here that's a little bit further back. So we're going to go ahead and we'll tap on the layer for a minute and we'll alpha lock it so we can't paint outside of the layer we just worked on. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to move up a color in the same column, so the middle of the second column from the right. Your brush wants to be set to the option of the texture brush that I've provided in the description down below. So for you, it will be under imported, and we're looking for the dust brush. Now I've got it further up here in a textures folder, and we've got the dust brush here. We're going to set that to maybe around about sort of 20%, and we're going to blend out behind this mound here and blend up towards that top edge. Now I don't want you to go too high up because in a minute we are going to get rid of it. Try and wobble your pen around as well, create little random areas that's slightly higher, and so it's not a perfect left to right. As long as at the bottom it's nice and bright here and here, that's fine. Then we're going to go to the layer and we're going to tap on it and we're going to add a mask to it. So now we're going to start to hide parts of this layer. Now making sure we're on the mask, your color is set to black. And your brush is now going to go into airbrushing and the soft brush. With a soft airbrush around about maybe 9%, we're just going to sort of blend out that solid line. Now you don't have to get rid of it fully. We're just going to blend it out and get rid of it on just sort of a random level. You want to just take away more so in certain areas and then let the rest maybe get a little bit more faint. You don't have to take it away fully. It's going to be hidden by the blizzard, so that's kind of the approach that I'm going for here. And then I can blend that down a little bit as well. I can very lightly just kind of bring the shadow down a little bit more where it blends off into the distance where we can't quite see it because, again, the blizzard. Let's then go ahead and actually work on the background. So let's create a new layer and drag it underneath the one we were just working on. So it's going to be just in front of our background color. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the middle color in the far right column. We're going to make our soft airbrush probably around about sort of 20%, and we're going to kind of focus a bit of a beam. We're going to sort of bring this sort of light beam in here. It's going to be very faint to start with, so you might not see it too strong on my canvas. And then I'm going to sort of lightly in the background just maybe wobble in some additional areas of this color, and I can bring the brush size down to maybe like a 10% and maybe brighten up a little bit in behind here. But as long as you sort of bring in a little bit of a beam coming down on our subject here, we should end up with a lovely sort of setup for later on. We're then going to move to the color above it. So this one here, the top of that far right column. Same brush size-ish, around about maybe 15%. And we're going to focus that beam a little bit more again. So just sort of imagining maybe it's the moonlight in the blizzard, or just something that's a little bit brighter up in this top left corner, should I say. And it's beaming down through our design, and then it's going to give us sort of an option here to add highlights in certain areas too. So just here, and then maybe like the odd light sort of stroke inwards just to sort of vary up the background a little bit, add in like a little something else happening back there. Randomness with your background colors is quite key sometimes, just to sort of make it look like there's something else. Here, potentially, I've now introduced maybe another mound of ground a little bit further back in the distance, just simply by just putting a little dash of color. It's just down to interpretation. We're now going to go ahead and move to this layer here. So we're going to go ahead and tap on it, and we're going to alpha lock it. So we can't paint outside of it. We're going to go to our colors, and we're going to grab the middle color in that third column from the right. And we need to switch back to our dust brush. So again, for you, it'll be right at the very bottom under imported. And for me, it's in my textures folder. So we've got the dust brush here. And we're primarily, just to show you, we're going to go ahead and kind of bring in a light source that's going to kind of wrap in this area here. And it's going to fade out over here. And then we'll introduce like a little bit on the back end. So this area in here is going to be a little bit sort of darker. And also a bit of a shadow coming off of our subject too. So let's get rid of all those little squiggles and let's get started on adding in some highlights. So let's go to maybe around about 16%. I'm going to highlight the top edge, bring it down into here. And then where it starts to sort of dip down, I can start to maybe introduce like this kind of mini, not valley as such, but it is like a little sort of groove in between the main mound here where our subject is stood on. And then it kind of rolls around, the light comes in here, lights up the floor for us. And then we can just let this dust brush just sort of blend out on the edges. Lovely texture to this brush. And then we'll also go ahead and just behind our subject, brighten up just up here, and then bring that highlight down the hill as well. So just bring that down, introducing a little bit more highlight that's wrapping around the subject, almost as if the light source is coming from behind him. Now we'll go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and go up a color to the top of that third column from the right. It's almost white. Brush size probably is pretty good, about sort of 18%. I'm going to go ahead again and brighten up this edge, making this the brightest spot. And then we're going to just sort of layer on top, but don't go as far as the last color. I said that quite a lot in recent tutorials. Don't go as far as the previous color you've drawn in. That way you end up with a blend between what is the base color of the shape, the first color we used, and now this color that we're using. And we're just going to bring that white in here. Brighten up a little bit on the back, not too much, just a little bit on there. We can brighten this area here. And what this is going to do, it's also going to focus our attention right to the center of our design. We don't want people looking in these corners. We're not too interested back there. Now we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go down a layer though to the one that sits in behind, because I want there to be a little bit of a seamless sort of blend in some areas. So here where we've got the brightest spot, I'm just going to start to, on the layer in behind, just go left to right and blend my pretty much almost white color here into whatever that color was on that layer. And at some point there, you may end up with a little bit of a sort of blend between what's at the foreground and what's in sort of the midground. It's just ever so slight, sort of subtle there. What you could do ultimately as well is with the front layer, you could tap on it and add a mask to it. You'd reduce that brush size down to maybe 10% and actually get rid of that solid line there to guarantee a much smoother blend. As if the land comes from the back, we then end up with this mound here, and you can leave it a little bit more mound up over here, like so it's a solid line, but you just end up with a blend through foreground to midground and then ultimately to the back. Let's then go ahead and go back to the actual main layer here. So the main layer, we've got one more color to add, so we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab this color here, the bottom of the fourth column from the right. Let's make that brush size about sort of 25%, and we're going to sort of darken up the corners to emphasize even more that we don't want people to look in them. So we're going to darken up the corners, almost creating a bit of a vignette, focusing our attention to the areas we want people to look at. Now we're going to go ahead and go into our subject. So we're going to open up our subject group. Let's go down to the very bottom layer, which is the left foot. We'll simply tap on it, we will alpha lock it, and we'll somewhat repeat the same steps. We'll go to our colors. We will grab the shadow color to start with. So we're going to grab the bottom of the third column from the right. Your brush wants to still be the dust brush, so you're going to have to go back down to imported and grab the dust brush. Size, we can make it maybe around about 10%. And now we just need to consider a few factors. Where's the lighting coming from? So the body here is going to cast a bit of a shadow here on top of the leg, and then we can create a bit of a shadow here in the groove. We can bring that across a little bit more, just adding in some texture. Now try to sort of think about if there's too much of a blank area, just give it a few speckles, because in a moment when we add the highlights, we can just go back over it. As long as you've filled in most of the shape with some good texture, you'll be good to go. And then at the very bottom, I'm just going to sort of darken it up a little bit where it just touches the ground, like so. We'll then switch our color. We're going to go ahead and grab the color just beside it, so the bottom of the fourth column. So we're going to switch between these two for shadows and the top of here for highlights. I'm going to bring that size just a little bit lower, so I've got down to about 7% here, and then just right underneath the body and in this group here, in this sort of groove between the legs, I'm going to darken that up the most. And then we'll go to our highlight, so the top of the third column from the right. We'll bring that down to about 4%, and we're just going to brighten up the front here of the leg and then blend it across the leg, foot, whatever it is. We'll brighten that up and right up on the surface as well. So now we've got our shadow here being cast right into there. Let's then go to our layers, go upper layer, tap on it and alpha lock it. We'll go to our colors, we'll grab the bottom of the third column from the right and we'll repeat. So I'm going to make brush size up to about sort of 9 or 10%. Again, where's that lighting coming from? It's coming from up there somewhere, so it's going to really cast a shadow onto this leg and push that shadow round the back. Again, I'm going to give the front just a few specks of the texture. We'll then go to our colors and we will grab the shadow color just beside it, bottom of the fourth column. We'll reduce the brush size down to about 6%. Darken up where the majority of our really harsh shadows are, so right here and then a little bit down as well, so you can just come down the back of the leg a little bit more. And then we'll go to our colors, we'll grab the top of the third column. Again, we'll brighten up the front area and push it backwards. Brighten that up. Now, not too solid white, we don't want to sort of build it up too quickly. And also just a tiny bit on the back. We're just going to add like a little bit of a reverb highlight, just a tiny little one back there. And that's our legs done. We can then move into the other body. So we're going to go ahead to body 2. We'll tap on it, alpha lock it. Go to your colors and grab the shadow color at the bottom of the third column. Let's make the brush size a bit bigger though to save some time, about 14%. Again, where's that lighting coming from? Top left. So we want to, first of all, remember that this layer is of course stacked on top. So it's going to cast a shadow in behind here and also down the back as well. So we're going to go down here. We are going to sort of bring this into the body, keeping it nice and light, adding in some specks here and there. And then you can really sort of darken up the back area here, blend around to the front. Now we have other objects as well we need to factor in, like the stones on the chest. So we're going to bring the brush size down to 7%. We'll cast a bit of a shadow in behind them. Now we may need to go even smaller than that, down to about 4%, and just really get in behind the rocks and just add in a bit of a shadow in behind them. A little bit more so towards the bottom edge, like so. And also bring that brush size up to 9% and just sort of stroke around the bottom as well, where the light and the body's of course now rolling around underneath itself. And so the light wouldn't quite catch it quite as much. And I want to make sure under here it's got a good shadow, even though we've got a slightly darker one to come. We just want to make sure we've got a good foundation to be building on top of. If we go to our colors and we grab that darker color, the bottom of the fourth column from the right, I'm going to make the brush size probably around about 7%. And the first thing I'll do is get right underneath this one here. You can see I'm practically drawing underneath the other body part first. I want to get that shadow right underneath it. And now I can think about blending it out to the right hand side. I can make the brush size then bigger again, about 10%, and then just darken up the main largest area of shadow here. I'm just going to introduce some extra specks. I'll reduce the brush size down to about 7% and then also shadow under here as the body sort of rolls underneath itself, something like this. And just like we did before, about 4%, I'm going to get right underneath some of these rocks here. So if we build up a few different colors, and again, we don't go as far as the previous color, you can really build up a lot of definition. If we then switch to our highlights, so the top of that third column from the right, brush around about sort of 9 to 10%, we'll brighten up this left edge, brighten this up. It's going to be the brightest area, of course. And then we want to just be a little bit careful where we place it. So I'm dropping it down to 7%, and I'm just going to sort of bring that highlight in a little bit as it rolls around the body. We've got a little bit of a gap, and maybe there's a little bit of highlight here, nothing too crazy, and then it quickly transitions into our shadows. We're just making sure that this left edge is nice and bright. Again, we're just going to introduce a very slight reverb highlight both at the back and at the bottom, because the light would come off of this, it would come down off of the snow and up and onto the body. So we can just introduce a very light reverb underneath here. And it's all about how the light will bounce around the environment that all of these things are in. So it's coming down, hitting a bright white surface, it's going to ping right back up. Let's move up again a layer. So we're going to go into body number 1, or just body 1, alpha lock it. Go to our colors and repeat. Bottom of the 3rd column from the right. And we need to go ahead and shadow underneath the head. My brush size is still set to about 7%. Same process, so the head is going to cast a shadow this way. We want to get underneath that head and just make sure it's got a good connection to this area here. We'll shadow round the back here. Blend that round towards the front area. Again, our highlights can overlap later on if we've gone too far. We'll darken up under here where the light again starts to maybe fall off a little bit more. Now we don't want to go too solid down there, so I'm just going to undo that a little bit and go back on myself. This stone here, I'm going to go down to 4% and add in a lovely casted shadow behind that too. So we're going to go ahead and just cast that shadow downwards and a little bit off. I'm going to be a bit more adventurous with this one though, cast a longer shadow. Then we'll go to our darker shadow color, the bottom of the 4th column from the right. Bring that brush up to 9%. Darken underneath here. In fact, I'm going to bring that back down to 7 and just darken underneath the head and pushing it off to the right hand side a bit more. And I'm doing lots and lots of taps. I'm not trying to do it in sort of one really hard pressured movement, because if you do that, you don't have this option to then go back on yourself. You'll also notice that I've also added left even a light sort of highlight on this edge, so I might not even need to add a reverb. I'm going to bring that shadow down underneath a little bit more. Nothing too solid. I don't want the color to be too solid. We'll bring that down to 4% and get just behind that stone again. Just darkening that up a little bit in here. And then we'll move into our highlights. We'll go to our colors, grab the top of the 3rd column from the right. Make that brush size probably around about 5%, just so we can get in this small space. We'll brighten up this left edge. Bring that round a tiny bit. Here we'll definitely need to, but I'm going to have to reduce it down to 4% now, just so I can be really accurate with where my placement is of this highlight. I'm going to sort of blend down here just a little bit, as if there is maybe a little bit of lighting wrapping around, and you can also sort of sharpen up this shadow as well by putting the highlight right into there. You sharpen up that line a little bit. Really light, really light. And then again, let's just make sure it all matches color wise. I'll add a little bit of a reverb there and a tiny one underneath here as well. Let's move then into the next spot, which is going to be the head. We're going to tap on it and we're going to alpha lock it. Now for this one, we're going to end up having to do a few different things and factor in a few different things. We have to factor in the teeth and the mouth, and it's all on one layer. So we need to start off with our shadows first of all, and also sort of plan out a few of the shapes that we need. So we're going to grab this color here, the bottom of the 3rd column from the right. We're going to make our brush size probably around about 10%, just so we can get some early easy shadows in here. So we're going to come down here. We're going to blend out. Now notice how I've kept away from the mouth a little bit. I'm going to shade down here, and now I immediately need to drop down to about 6%. We're going to go ahead and we'll shade over the top of the head and down here. I'm going to blend it in. Again, our highlights can always take over later on. So what I've now done is I've gone up to my stencil, I've tapped on it and I've inverted it, which has now changed it to black, and you should be able to see a little bit more of the stencil. Now making sure I go back in my layers and go back down to head layer here. We're going to make sure we now start to factor in a few of the other areas, such as the mouth here, the top lip and the teeth. For example, if we get the teeth and we go down to about sort of a 3 or 4%, let's try and get it into a 3. I'm going to go ahead and go underneath this line here, which you can see, and feel free to turn yours up if needs be. And then I'm going to shadow in behind here as well. I'm going to blend that in. And you can see this line as the sort of top lip comes round and into like a little bit of a triangle area back here. And then we can blend underneath the tooth, and it's almost like one large front tooth. Lovely animated look to it. And then we'll really darken up along that line and blend out. Then we need to factor in the top lip as well. So again, let's keep with the 2% for a moment. We're just going to very lightly just go down here. Now, don't worry if yours starts to go a little bit higher than the line. Our highlights in a moment will get rid of them. The top lip does cast a little bit of a shadow onto the tooth, and again, we have full control in a minute to fix what we need to fix. So we're going to go along the mouth here. We're going to create a little bit of a curve up in the corner here, up in the corner of the mouth. So we're just going to create a little bit of a curve and again blend that out. I'm going to blend this one down. Not too worried about on top. And if we make our brush size about sort of 4%, we can just lightly sort of shade underneath the mouth a bit more. Don't worry about this big tooth. We can leave that area a bit more. And you've separated a few of the shapes now without having to create separate shapes. I'm also now just darkening up the back end here of the head. And I'm going to go ahead with a very light 6% size. Let's go back up to there. Just very lightly, just add a little bit of sort of flake of this dust brush in here. Again, we can fix it in a moment. Now, I want to go ahead and then factor in a few of the areas of the face. So we're going to go down to a 4% brush size. We're going to go ahead and just sort of shade under the tip here more so. So we're going to add in a little bit of a shadow here and then a little bit underneath the nose with a little bit of a gap. Sometimes you don't have to have a connecting shadow to make it sort of match up. This is sticking outwards and then it's casting a shadow down onto the surface. We're going to go down the right edge over here where we've got the other cheek in the background, and we will also round this off as well, adding in a little bit of shadow. The eyes themselves, we're going to go and add in a little bit of a shadow around the top edge, just a little bit, and likewise on the right side too. And the eyebrows, we're also going to go down to about sort of 2% if we can, if it'll stick there for me. I'm going to add in a little bit of a shadow underneath here. And again, remembering with that light source is just kind of blend them out to the right a bit more. Underneath here. And then we should have identified quite a few features by doing this. The other thing I need to do is just while we've got it about 2% brush size, I just want to introduce a very light cheek sort of mark here. So just a very, very light cheek. So a little bit of a curve up here, like so. So now we've got those details in, let's go ahead and just further the shadows a little bit. So we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab the bottom of the fourth column from the right. With a small 2% brush size, we're just going to go ahead and make sure we darken up right on that line of our stencil here and blend it around, just so we've got some very, very obvious and clear separation between the top lip essentially and the rest of the face. I'm also going to go ahead and darken up down here. Now, because we're doing this all on one layer, I'm just going to darken up this back area. We don't want to sort of add in our highlights till the end. The highlights will redefine a lot of the shapes. If we get our shading in first, we can get sort of the foundations of where they all sit. And I'm going to bring in a little bit of a shadow here, just a little bit just beside the tooth. And then the highlights again will redefine those edges. Now, I'm going to make the brush size about 4% and just darken up a little bit down this edge of the face, just a tiny bit. Lovely stuff. And also a little bit up here around on these edges that I've already done in, and underneath the nose. The nice thing with these sort of darker shadows is we can go ahead and revisit them as well. So I'm just adding in a little bit under here and then letting the original color of the shadows, let it sort of take over here, because then they blend into one another. So let's then go ahead and on the same layer, go to our colors, grab our snowy bright color here, the top of that third column from the right. Let's make the brush size around about sort of, let's go to about sort of 7%. We'll go down this edge, brightening it up, blending it across. So now your pressure should get nice and sort of light as you sort of blend the colors into one another. You're blending them around the shape. We're going to bring that size down to around about sort of a 2% brush size. And then here on the tooth, we can go ahead and block it in. Now we're going to pressure it in a lot harder towards this bottom here. So the bottom edge of the tooth. And we can always shade it as well in a moment. And then I want to blend up towards those shadows. Those shadows still need to be in place, but I want to blend up towards them. So the majority white, and then just blend up towards that line so that the shadow still overlaps the top of the tooth, because it should do. So you've got a lovely bright tooth there at the front. And we can then go ahead and with this small size of the brush, we can go ahead and do the top lip. And this is what I meant. We can go over the top of our shadows if we need to. I've done quite a clean line, to be fair. So it's not too critical that this is in place. But if yours was a little bit bigger, maybe, this here now will tidy up that layer quite a bit. And then once you've gone from a 2, you can go up to a 4% and then blend that into that top area of the face. And it just overlaps nicely. But look at the separation between this area now and the layer above, sort of the area of the face above, should I say. Here where we've got this little cheek curve mark, I just want to curve into that, make it nice and bright and white. And then we'll make the brush size about 7% and do the top of the head. Avoiding some of your shadows where possible, but you can always go back in and put them back in if needs be. Add a little bit more onto here. And I'm also going to brighten this up as much as I can here, blending that white all the way across. You can sharpen up some of your shadows by getting really close up to them, but that's looking awesome. Very happy with that. Now again, we can go back to our shadows if we need to. We can add in some really dark details here. We can go ahead and grab that color of the bottom of the 4th column, bring that size now down to a really small sort of 2% and get really, really hard with your pressure in here, just underneath, just to really darken them up a bit more. You can really blend on top of the tooth if you wish. And again, back here, just in case you've added any white, just really darken up behind the tooth. Let's go ahead then and move in towards these eyes, because I want just around the top edge of the eyes now to add in a very dark line. He's almost got like a line of eyeliner around the top, probably just to help sort of the eyes stand out a bit more. And we're going to go around this top edge, round into here, darkening it up, pressing quite firm just so I can get that nice solid line just in behind the eyes themselves. While we're here, let's go ahead and move into the nose area. So we're going to go to the nose, we're going to tap on it and we're going to alpha lock it. We're going to start off by going to our colors and we're going to grab our shading color, the bottom of the, what column is this? 5th from the right. Brush size, let's make it about sort of 7% and just give a general shadow to the bottom edge. So general shadow coming through here like so. Then we're going to go ahead and set the brush size to something quite small, maybe around about sort of 2 or 1%, and just curve some darker lines in the carrot, like so, up. Not all the way to the top, but just a few lines here and there, just to show some grooves in the carrot, and just it'll give us some areas to add some detail to. Now, don't go mad and add in tons of these. I would just add enough so that you can just about see a few of them, because if we now switch to our colors and go to the brightest orange at the top of that 5th column from the right, let's go back to 4% and brighten up the top edge. Hopefully you've left enough of a gap. Don't worry if you haven't. I'm going to get into here and I'm just going to bring that highlight down a little bit there too. And right on the end as well. And then with this brighter tone, I'm going to go ahead and bring that brush size down to the same sort of size, about 2 or 1%. And then where you've got a shadow line, you can bring down a highlight line. So you can kind of match up to it. So on the top edge of each of your shadow lines, you can just introduce a highlight line and let that run all the way down towards your shadows as well. Something like this. Something like that. And if you zoom out, you should have some really awesome little grooves in the nose. Now we also want to go ahead and add in like a brighter spot to the top of this nose too. So we're going to go to our colors. We will grab this color here, the top of the 3rd column from the right, but we want to keep our pressure really, really light. So we're going to go to the 4%. We're going to very lightly just add a little light speckling of the snow. So just a very, very, very light coat just towards the top edge, bringing it down the nose, just to sort of give it, a bit of a highlight, and 2, really sort of blend it into its environment a bit more. So next in our layers, we're going to go to them, and the next one up is the dots for the stones. We're just going to tap on that. We're going to alpha lock it so we can't paint outside of it. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to go ahead and grab this color here. It is the bottom of the 2nd column from the right. And same brush as before, we're just going to keep the dust brush and we're just going to lightly, just on the top of the stone here, just add in a little bit of a highlight just randomly just towards that top left edge. You can create little sort of random shapes in here just to make it look like the rock has little areas of sort of different structure. And the eyes themselves, the only thing I want to do with the eyes is just drop that down to 2% and just add in the tiniest, lightest highlight just up in the top left edge there. Just the tiniest little one. Then we're going to go to our layers, go up to the arms, we'll tap on them too and we will alpha lock them. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the darker tone at the bottom of the 5th column. We're going to go to our brush, we're going to go into calligraphy. We're going to use the blotchy brush and we're going to have it set to about sort of 37%. This is going to be our shadows, and all we want to do is bear in mind the top left, of course, is where our highlight is. So we're just going to run down this edge, random pressures down this edge here, down this stick, down in this stick here, in towards those shadows. They can blend in together, that's fine. Underside of this one, and that's it. That's all we need to do. Just keep it really, really simple to make it look a little bit more 3D. We'll go down this edge here because the highlight's on the left side of the stick. Come down here, a little bit in that gap, a little bit in there, and maybe a little bit on the back of that little sticky bit. And that's it. Let's move up to the very top. Again, same principle, but we'll just go up the right side, up the right edge, come down there, leaving some areas a little bit brighter. You don't want to sort of block in the shadows too much, and the underside here of that one. And the eyebrows, we're just going to go ahead and add in a little bit on the underside of them and the top edge of the one on the right, just because of the way the lighting is. If we then go ahead and we turn off our stencil at the top, we can zoom out and we can take a look at where we are now. At the moment, we've got an awesome subject just in the snow, but let's make this a bit of a blizzard. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go right to the top underneath our stencil though and create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors and making sure we are on this color here, the top of the 3rd column from the right. Brush wants to be set to the option of elements and driven snow. I've got 3 different sizes here. We have 100%, we have 44, and we have 13. Small, medium, and large, just so that we can vary up our snow. Now I'm going to go for the 100% first. I'm going to zoom out, just making sure I can see the whole of the canvas, and I'm going to drag down in kind of a top left fashion. The lines themselves will probably come more in a downward fashion, that's fine. I'm going to give it a light coat to start with. We're then going to go ahead and go up to our adjustments. We're going to go to the option of motion blur. We're going to drag down in a bottom right fashion, so not so much like a straight line, and the motion that you put into it is depending on the action that you did with the pencil. So if I draw down, it's going to go in a downward fashion. If I go horizontal, it's going to go horizontal. So I can pick, I'm going to go down, but ever so slightly off to the right. A very slight diagonal sort of movement to it. So these ones here are going to be really kind of moving at a 20% Gaussian blur down to the bottom right. And then I'm going to go ahead and create another new layer. I'll swipe from left to right on both of these and group them together, just so all of our snow's in one group. And then I'm going to add in a few more larger ones, just in here, that are just caught, not moving quite as fast. So these ones are going to be a little bit small, like static. Then we're going to go ahead and go down to 44%. We'll introduce some smaller snow in here. Get right down into here as well. Add some snow where it's coming really close to us as we're looking at this scene. And then we'll bring that down to 13% as well. And we can get in there and add in some really fun small areas of snow. And you can go over the top of Olaf as well, add in some snow. I wouldn't add any in sort of areas where maybe like the face, you don't want to add it in, otherwise it will look like you maybe add a highlight incorrectly with his like eyes or something like that. So with this smaller one, I'm focusing it a little bit more towards the center of my design, so I can add the most detail there, and also where this wonderful highlight's coming down from the top left. I'm getting in here, varying up my pressure in some areas, so some areas of the snow are really bright with this smaller size, and some are a little bit lighter. It's dependent on your pressure. So we've got some awesome little snowy details in here. And now there is one final layer that we can add to really sort of bring our subject right out of the scene a bit more. We can go to our layers, we can go ahead and create a new layer above that group of snow, which you can collapse down, likewise your subject too. Change the blend mode from normal to add. We can go to the option under airbrushing of the soft brush. Same color that we were working with, so about, what have I got here? About 10% looks pretty good. Now please be quite sparing with this. We want to sort of really brighten this up as if there's a beam of light coming from the top left. If you start off really, really gentle, you can really build the color up. Build the color up. Be in full control of where it lands on your design, and also sort of how it lands on your subject. Now, one thing I would note is if you get really close to your subject, you're going to end up really blowing these whites out. You know, they are, if you press really firm, you're going to end up making a solid white. So try and keep it to a minimum. I'm not going to get too close to my subject. What I'm intending to do with the 10% is just sort of brighten up this top left area, whether it's moonlight or whatever it is, and just really kind of create a light source. And then maybe one or two central kind of beams here that are coming down on our subject like so. I'm just going to sort of really brighten up in this area here. Really kind of brighten up that top left corner. And I don't want to run over the subject myself. Now, if you want to and you also want to avoid that, just go to your eraser, go to airbrushing and the soft brush, and just make sure with a 4% brush size, you just take away any of this. I don't want to brighten that too much of the subject. So I want to sort of take that back and push it just onto the very edge, if anything. Right up onto the very edge. I like all the details that we added in and all the hard work that we did here. It's just an additional layer. Now really you could probably move that back in the design if you really wanted to, but I think that helps just stage our scene a little bit more. And one final thing to do is add a shadow to our subject on the ground here. So we're going to go ahead and just in front of our ground, I'm going to create a separate layer for it. I'm going to go to my colors. I'm going to first of all grab this color here, the bottom of that third column from the right. Brush wants to go back to the option of textures for me and the dust brush. For you, again, it'll be under imported. And maybe with a 4% to start with. It's going to look very similar to the color that's already there, but we're just trying to triple check because everybody's design is going to look a little bit different to each other. That right underneath the feet, we've got a good amount of this base color, and we can push the shadow sort of down the hill a little bit, like so. Bringing that shadow down like that, over the mound and then down the hill. Be very light, building it up stroke by stroke. And then we'll go to our colors. We'll grab the darker tone, the bottom of the fourth column from the right, and get underneath those little feet, little legs. I've changed the name for them every single time we've come back to them. And now I'm pushing the lighting off to the right hand side. So I'm just getting around the bottom of the feet and the legs, whatever they are. We'll push it. Let me know in the comments what you think they are. Are they legs? Are they just feet? What are they? 12% now, just to sort of just speed up the shadow process and just pushing that again down the banking just to add our character into scene. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to go full screen with 4 and we end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed this design. As always, please be sure to tag me in your finished creations over on Instagram. Do one better and share them with the community that we have over on Discord. It's completely free to join and you can join a wonderful community over there. As always, a massive shout out to all of my supporters over on Patreon who help make these videos possible. If you want to support me and the channel and also get access to a catalogue of nearly 90 tutorials at the time of recording and get your name featured in videos, get early access to YouTube videos, sneak peeks and much, much more, hit the link in the description down below and come and show your support. And if you like this tutorial here on YouTube, you'll probably like this one on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day and I'll see you in the next one.